it's interesting to me that, and I say this in general, that, one of Satan's tactics is to repackage material. Even if you go into stuff that's ancient ideas, it gets repackaged in new age ideas and whatever. And this is no different. I'm not saying anybody believes that they're in the city of David that it's satanic, but I'm simply to say that, for example, currently you have those that are that propose that the Temple of Solomon as well as the Herodian Temple were in the city of David, which is down south off of the Temple Mount, the high point. And this has been, popularized by people recently, probably in the last 10 years or so. But when I say the reason I bring that up is because it's just new. It's just newly repackaged. This was firstly and most popularly packaged by a guy named Ernest Martin. Ernest Martin was a scholar in the late 20th century. And he wrote a book called The Temples That Jerusalem Forgot. I remember reading it back in, 1994, 95. And what he did was he presented material in there. A lot of it was based on the writings of Josephus, that what we see today as the Temple Mount, 37 acres, was actually the Antonia Fortress, which is spoken about, again, which was their main fortress. So when he wrote this, again, in the early 90s, and then made his claims, you could get away with some of that stuff. You could get away with writings that were, even 50 years ago, 60 years ago. But now when we see the city of David excavations, which, again, we always go there because it's phenomenal what's happening there. And under Eilat Mazar, she's no longer with us, but she was one of the main archaeologists there, along with her grandfather. And so what do? It is so well excavated now, so well down to the bedrock. I mean, they David's palace, you name it, all the way down, going back to the Iron Age, which is around 1200 BC. So when you look at that, these archaeologists that are there, they've been there for sometimes a generation. They're looking around and they're like, absolutely zero evidence that either one of the temples were here. Now, again, you could see that in the 90s where you didn't have, you can make these claims like, oh, it's clearly there based on the textual history. But even there, now that it's been examined archaeologically now they can go back and say, oh, now we can see why this was misunderstood by Ernest Martin in reading Josephus. And so now that we have this understanding, we can see Josephus was saying this, and now we can connect it together. So anybody that is perpetuating these claims, again, there's not a single, really, of all the archaeologists, you're not going to find one or two, and whether you can even one or two, that would make the claim, those that are familiar with the archaeology of Jerusalem, that those temples existed down in the city of David. There is simply just no room for it. And anybody that walks in there, you can look around and see clearly there's no room. Secondly, and not that this, as you look at the when David did the census, remember that, and he bought the threshing floor. It is quite clear that threshing floor was up on the higher point of the Mount of Moriah, not down in the lower part where you have the Taropian Valley to the west and the Kidron Valley to the east. Even there, for the sake of the threshing floor, doesn't work in the same way. And so these things have been rebutted. But here's the problem. Is people aren't reading necessarily the archaeological journal articles about this or the excavation reports. They're watching a YouTube video. And there it's proven.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate.
Well, it's so true. So recently, I had the opportunity to go with Eli Shukron down to the Melchizedek Temple, Temple Zero. That predates David. That goes back to the time of Abraham. And it is phenomenal, folks. But it's like not much bigger than the width of my hands. There's 4 sections. Each section is just a little bit bigger than this right here. You cannot fit the hundreds of thousands and millions of Jews that would come to Jerusalem. The whole thing is ridiculous, but you can see, once you see it, Mondo, I was in Israel one time, and this guy was on the trip, and he was insistent that he had watched one of these videos, right? And he's insistent that the temple is in the city of David. And he's arguing with me. We're up in Galilee. And he's just arguing all the talking points that are out there. Where did the water come from and so forth? Da, 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 da. Right? I said, can you just wait until we get to the city of David and then we'll talk then? No sooner did we pull up to the city of David, half hour into it, he goes, you're right. There's no way the temple is here. If once you go there, and with the water, Roddy Harrell at it's the Christ Church and the museum that's there, where the church and the cafe are. You go to the museum's incredible. Conrad Schick has built this model of the Temple Mount before all the excavation was done. How he was so accurate, we don't know. But you can see the cisterns for the water, millions upon millions of gallons of water. There's the Solomon's pools in Bethlehem that provided a massive amount of water. I mean, these aren't swimming pools. These things are like lakes. And they're in Bethlehem, the water would flow from Bethlehem all the way to the upper city of Jerusalem and to the Temple Mount. Unbelievable amounts of water, way more than the Gihon Springs could possibly provide, which would cover all of the animal sacrifice, everything that was needed for the animal sacrifices. So I look at this and go, if anybody go by the Christ Church Cafe and the museum there, talk to Roddy Harrell. He will give you a tour right there at the museum, and you start to see it, and you'll be educated, and you'll get it. And also, Mondo, Hadrian, when he comes in 135 AD and just starts slaughtering the Jews, he builds a shrine to Jupiter on the Temple Mount. Why did he do that? Because the Jews would go there, because that's where the temple was. Why would he do it if it was the Roman, the Antonian forces? Yeah, the garrison. Why would he do such a thing? He did it to humiliate the Jews and eliminate the thought of the God of the Bible. Didn't work. He actually marked the spot where the temple went.
Absolutely. And you see that several times there, even with the Temple of Venus over at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. So you have, this is the standard approach, because you had, of course, the Jewish perspective, and then you had the Christian perspective of, the death and resurrection of Jesus over there on the west side, at least historically speaking. So when you look at all of the archaeology, especially, I will say this, that the other aspect, which you didn't ask about this, but the other question then is, on the Temple Mount itself, you have, was the temple to the north by the Dome of the Spirits, or was the temple to the south underneath the Dome of the Rock? And so you have that debate that rages on as well. But at the end of the day, my perspective on it is, right now people wonder, thinking about the coming temple, can it be, does the Dome of the Rock have to be removed? And the typical consensus, I would say, among the religious people is they are saying, yes, the Dome of the Rock would have to be removed somehow, whatever that means. It's not a mosque, right? It's a shrine. The only mosque there is the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the south side. And so but there's others that are very strong that it's to the north. Again, the Dome of the Spirits there. And so it wouldn't have to be. But what's missing here? You know this as well as I do. Well, what's missing is any genuine archaeological excavations done by Israelis. Okay, even the Temple Mount Sifting Project was done with the remnants. It was the garbage that was brought out by some illegal activity by the Palestinians on the Temple Mount. So my thinking in all of it is that when you look at the different perspectives, again, you have all these different arguments. When the time comes, when they get permission from, which I think will be through the Antichrist, and whatever position he holds, don't know yet. But what's the first thing they're going to do? Well, they're going to do a little minor excavation, and they'll be able to determine whether it's the north site or the Dome of the Rock site. But I can tell you that for the most part, based on already archaeological excavation, nobody's going to be proposing the city of David because they've already dug that up.
Yeah, no kidding. Those are great points. Very good.